Talk to me. Talk to me.
In 1908, after being rejected by the Academy of Fine Arts, Vienna, you ran out of money.
Yeah, it was not a good time. In 1909, I was living as a homeless shelter. On the following year, I had settled into a house for poor working men.
During this time, Vienna was a hotbed of religious prejudice and racism. Fears of being overrun by immigrants from the East were widespread, and the populist mayor, a Karl Lueger, exploited the rhetoric of virulent anti-Semitism for political effect. And a Jörg Schonerer's pan-Germanic anti-Semitism had a strong following in the district in which you lived. Additionally, local papers, such as the Deutsches Volksblatt, fanned prejudice and played on a Christian fears of being swamped by an influx of Eastern Jews.
And your point is?
Well, I'm simply illustrating what was going on in Vienna, during the time in which you lived there, and wondering whether this is where your anti-Semitism originated and was first expressed.
Whatever. I had a number of Jewish friends at the hostel in which I lived. And as far as George Sorder's pan-Germanic views, like many Austrian Germans, I developed German nationalist ideas from a young age and expressed loyalty only to Germany. I despised the declining Habsburg monarchy and its rule over an ethnically diverse empire. By my friends and I even used the German greeting Heil and sang the Deutschlandlied instead of the Austrian imperial anthem.
It's said that you took Germany's defeat in the Great War personally.
I was embittered over the collapse of the war effort. Like many other Germans nationalists, I believed that the German army, undefeated in the field, had been stabbed in the back on the home front by civilian leaders and Marxists.
This belief, now referred to as the stab in the back myth, was widely held in right-wing circles in Germany. Namely, that the German army was betrayed by November criminals who used the end of the war to seize power and create the Weimar Republic, the Federal Republic and semi-presidential representative democracy established in 1919 in Germany to replace the imperial form of government.
Myth. What myth? The Weimar Republic was a morass of corruption, degeneracy, and ruthless persecution of the honest national opposition. Germany and real Germans suffered under 14 years of rule by Jews, Marxists, and cultural Bolsheviks. And that Treaty of Versailles that they signed brought national humiliation.
So, World War I is over. Now what?
I returned to Munich, trying to remain in the army for as long as possible. In July 1919, I was appointed an intelligence agent of a reconnaissance commando unit of the Reichswehr, the military organization of Germany created in 1919. I was assigned to influence other soldiers and to infiltrate the German Workers' Party.
The German Workers' Party, in German known as the DAP, was founded in Munich on January 5, 1919 by an Anton Drexler, who was also a member of the Thule Society, an occultist group that believed in Aryan supremacy and which had those wishing to become members swear a blood declaration of faith that there was no Jewish or colored blood flowing in them and in their wives, and that none of their ancestors were members of the colored races. Together with Karl Harrer, Thule Society secretary, Drexler established the DAP, whose members met periodically for discussion with themes of nationalism and racism directed against the Jews.
Yeah. While monitoring the activities of the DAP, I became attracted to Drexler's anti-Semitic, nationalist, anti-capitalist, and anti-Marxist ideas, and agreed with his views for a strong, active government, a non-Jewish version of socialism, and solidarity among all members of society. I also met Dietrich Eckart, another of the party's founders, who became my mentor, exchanging ideas with me and introducing me to a wide range of people in Munich society.
In February 1921, you spoke to a crowd of over 6,000 in Munich, and to publicize the meeting, 2 truckloads of party supporters drove around town waving swastika flags and throwing leaflets.
Yeah, I sure knew how to advertise an event. But I gained notoriety for my rowdy and controversial speeches against the Treaty of Versailles, rival politicians, and especially Marxists and Jews. And around this time, Nazi newspapers began agitating for a boycott of Jewish businesses. Some of my earlier followers included Rudolf Hess, Hermann Goering, and Ernst Röhm, who headed up our paramilitary organization, the SA, more commonly known as the Stormtroopers or the Brown Shirts, on which protected our meetings and attacked political opponents. Additionally, a group of exiles from Russia, who were financed with funds channeled from wealthy industrials, introduced me to the idea of a Jewish conspiracy, linking international finance with Bolshevism.
It was while you were there that you supposedly wrote your 2-volume Mein Kampf, or in English, My Struggle.
Yeah, I was devoted entirely to the book, and I began dictating it to my deputy, Rudolf Hess. I must say that I wanted the title to be 4.5 years of struggle against lies, stupidity, and cowardice. But my publisher felt it needed to be shorter.
The book laid out your plans for transforming German society into one based on race, and some chapters even implied genocide. It was dedicated to Thule Society member Dietrich Eckart and influenced by the passing of The Great Race by Madison Grant, an American eugenicist, lawyer, and amateur anthropologist who theorized Nordic superiority and argued for a strong eugenics program in order to save the waning Nordics from inundation of other race types.
The passing of the Great Race. It was my Bible. And in Mein Kampf, my main thesis was of the Jewish peril, that there was a Jewish conspiracy to gain world leadership.
You, sir, are deluded. However, here it is, 2014, and far too many people still believe that there's some Jewish or Zionist conspiracy to take over the world.
Whatever. The book was very popular, and I made money from it. With the first volume published in 1925 and the second in 1926. By 1933, 1 million copies were sold.
Meanwhile, during this period from 1931 to 1932, the Nazi Party's policy of anti-Semitism continued, and SA brown shirt thugs physically prevented customers from entering Jewish shops, windows were systematically smashed, and Jewish shop owners threatened.
They were not wanted or welcome, and Germans should only patronize other Germans.
After 2 further parliamentary elections in July and November of 1932 did not result in the formation of a majority government, von Hindenburg reluctantly agreed to appoint you as chancellor.
Yeah, I was to head a short-lived coalition government formed by the Nazi Party and Hugenberg's German Nationalist People's Party. Ha! Short-lived.
And though your rise to power was about to be realized, you and your party, well, they continued your attack on Jews.
Sure, it was easy to use the centuries-old hate that resided in Christian Germans toward Jews, and it helped divert attention away from mine becoming their dictator.
At Christmas 1932, the Central Office of the Nazi Party organized a nationwide boycott of Jewish businesses, and German businesses, particularly large organizations like banks, insurance companies, and industrial firms such as Siemens, increasingly refused to employ Jews.
And many hotels, restaurants, and cafes barred Jews from entering. On the resort island of Borkum banned Jews anywhere on the island. Still, this behavior was pretty common in Europe at the time, and not just in Germany, though we may have been more extreme in our treatment of Jews.
And it should be noted that anti-Semitism has been on the rise in much of the Western world today.
On election day, the Nazi Party's share of the vote increased to to 43.9% of a total of over 17 million voters. And we won 288 seats. It's the largest number of seats in Parliament.
And following the victory, there was widespread violence and hooliganism directed at Jewish businesses and individuals. Jewish lawyers and judges were physically prevented from reaching the courts, and in some cases, the SA created improvised concentration camps for prominent Jewish anti-Nazis.
What better way to celebrate our victory?
On April 1st, 1933, the Nazis carried out their first nationwide planned action against Jews, a boycott targeting Jewish businesses and professionals.
Well, they had it coming. They were boycotting German goods.
Yes, I mean the nerve of them. Anyhow, on the day of the boycott, the SA stood menacingly in front of Jewish-owned department stores and retail establishments and the offices of professions such as doctors and lawyers. The Star of David was painted in yellow and black across thousands of doors and windows with accompanying anti-Semitic slogans. Additionally, throughout Germany, acts of violence against individual Jews and Jewish property occurred.
Jews were our misfortune, and they needed to leave Germany and go to Palestine.
A week later, on April 7, 1933, the law for the restoration of the professional civil service was passed, which restricted employment in the civil service to Aryans, meaning that Jews cannot serve as teachers, professors, judges, and other government positions. Jewish government workers, including teachers in public schools and universities, were fired. Doctors followed closely behind, and Jews were barred from claiming any rights as war veterans, although 35,000 German Jews died in the Great War serving Germany.
Whatever.
On September 15, 1935, you presented two laws, known as the Nuremberg Laws, to the Reichstag. The laws banned sexual relations and marriages between Aryans and Jews, and were later extended to include Gypsies, Negroes, and their bastard offspring.
Yeah, we had to protect the integrity and pureness of the master race.
The laws also forbade the employment of non-Jewish women under the age of 45 in Jewish households and deprived so-called non-Aryans of the benefits of German citizenship and from participation in German civic life.
The Nuremberg laws also classified people with foreign German grandparents as German or kindred blood, while people were classified as Jews if they descended from 3 or more Jewish grandparents. A person with 1 or 2 Jewish grandparents was a Mischling, a crossbreed or mixed blood. Only non-Jewish white Europeans were classified as Aryans.
And to celebrate the laws, books judged to be Jewish were publicly burned in elaborate ceremonies. Plus, Jewish-owned businesses were gradually forced to sell out to non-Jewish Germans. Over the 2-day period of November 9th and 10th, 1938, a series of coordinated attacks against Jews throughout Germany and parts of Austria were carried out by SA stormtroopers and non-Jewish civilians in what is now known as Krystalnacht, or Krystalnight, because of the shards of broken glass that littered the streets after Jewish-owned stores, buildings, and synagogues had their windows smashed, all while German authorities looked on without intervening. At least 91 Jews were killed in the attacks, and 30,000 were arrested and incarcerated in concentration camps. Jewish homes, hospitals, and schools were ransacked. Over 1,000 synagogues were burned, 95 in Vienna alone, and over 8,000 Jewish businesses were destroyed or damaged. Krystalnacht is viewed by many historians as the beginning of the final solution and the Holocaust.
If only they had all gone to Palestine. But they didn't.
Talk to me.